Hi, guys. Welcome to the chat. Glad to see you guys talking and conversing. I was going to sign on at 6:15 and I decided to go ahead and sign on now just so that I can make sure that I am signed on to Instagram and Twitter. So give me a couple minutes. Um, Okay, I think I got it. As long as I didn't push any buttons, we're good to go. I love your conversations before I go live. I was just scrolling through and I see Deb commenting and Sammy and Live Life, and it's awesome. So let me go back and just acknowledge all of you before we jump into what this is all about. So she prays, hello, and welcome to the chat. Thank you for that comment. I'm so glad that you're excited to hear about this. And thank you. I am feeling better. Thank you. Today I got a chance to go out into my garden and do some gardening and listen to the beautiful birds, get some fresh air, do some pruning, some mulching, and just kind of experience some nature. So that tells me I'm doing better. So thank you so much for that. It's a coping skill too to go in the garden for those of you who are gardeners. Deb, thank you so much. Says, I love the thumbnail of you, Miss Tamara. Thank you. So does my mom. That's kind of interesting. But welcome to the chat, Deb. Glad to see you. Sammy, hello and welcome. Glad to see you as well. I also see Live Life. Hello and welcome. Mama Lena, hello from Germany. Welcome. Glad to have you tonight. I also see Oh God. Here I go, pushing all the wrong buttons again. Chrome Butterfly and T Mac. Hello. I'm doing well, T Mac. How are you? Glad to see you both. But Chrome Butterfly and T Mac. Black girls getting their shift together. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you. I see Mark Taylor and Main House. Hello. Glad to see you as well. Annie Welker, Kyra Knows 144. Hello. Glad to see you too. And I'm sure R.A. Andrews, hello, you just signed on. Welcome. I'm sure as we go along, you guys will see more people popping on. So, and I will definitely acknowledge you. Yeah, that's so true, Deb. I'm going to let you guys see what Deb says. I'm going to plop it on the screen. She says, well, I am your internet mom. So great moms agree. That's so true. I'm going to tell my mom that tonight. Hopefully she can handle it. She's protective, Deb. I'm just letting you know. Um, I love you guys. You guys are so great. So, let me give you some background information on this topic. Okay. Traumatic bonding is a topic that I have kind of stayed away from, not intentionally. I think it's been mainly unintentionally because, it's like if you find one toxic bonding, traumatic bonding topic on YouTube, you're going to find another. It's like something that everybody is talking about. But in tonight's live chat, I want to give you a different angle. I want to highlight how much of a complex attachment behavior traumatic bonding actually is. And I want to highlight how perfectionism and people pleasing kind of stems from that. I also want to highlight too with you guys that perfectionism and people pleasing can also stem just from a quote unquote, for lack of a clinical term, normal place within human beings, right? I think we all strive to arrive at a certain level, right? We all strive to meet expectations other people have set for us, and we also strive to, kind of compete against ourselves, right? So it's easy for us to kind of slip into that people pleasing perfectionist mindset without really knowing that you have done that, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be traumatic bonding or some kind of complex attachment behavior that has, led to this people pleasing or perfectionism. Bonus part of this live chat for you tonight is that I want to give you some ways on how to not be a people pleaser. So basically some ways on how to survive outside of that people pleasing mindset. Now, let me share a little bit of self disclosure, as I think self disclosure can sometimes be therapeutic for those who are just needing that validation. I think in a lot of ways that I can be a perfectionist, but it depends on what it is. I also think, too, that growing up, I was very much a people pleaser. I was not your average teenage girl. I was the one who studied, read all the time, wanted to do mature things like travel, have conversations in groups. I was always reading a psychology book, a research article, encyclopedia, but I was also a normal, average, quote unquote, kid, if you will, you know? But for the most part, my character was I'm going to do my adolescence to the best of my ability. There was no smoking marijuana, there was no cigarettes, there was no alcoholism. Like I was a perfect adolescent girl. Did I have moments where I was rebellious and oppositional defiant? Absolutely, because I had a very independent mind. But my adolescence and my young adulthood, I think, was very people pleasing. And I think it was maybe when I hit the age of 27, 28, 29, maybe 30, that I realized that my people pleasing behavior had to go. I was getting tired. I was getting drained. I was getting burned out. I couldn't really see my true value. And I found myself kind of lost in my career because I didn't understand that I had the ability to think outside of the typical educational system that teaches you about psychology, which is why this channel exists in the first place. I think I kind of woke up when I hit like 27, 28, 29, 30. And I realized you got to stop people pleasing. And so that's my personal story of people pleasing. I did burn out completely. And as a matter of fact, I had to take an entire year off from school and work to rebound because I was so much of a people pleaser, you know? Excuse me. So that's my story for you. That's my self-disclosure. So those of you who are watching in this live chat tonight, it's okay if you have been a people pleaser in the past. It's okay if you have some perfectionistic tendencies. My goal in this live chat is to help you see that some of the perfectionism and people pleasing is built by complex attachment trauma, by toxic family dynamics, and sometimes just by an internal need for external validation, right? Now, let me say before I go to the chat box and see what you guys are talking about and kind of get you engaged a little bit more, let me highlight some very normal people pleasing, perfectionistic behaviors that you may have displayed. I know I've displayed some in the past. So, the first thing that research suggests is very common in people pleasing is fear of abandonment and disapproval, right? It's pretty understandable. You don't want to be rejected. You don't want to be disapproved of. You don't want people to judge you. You don't want to be harassed or bullied. And you certainly don't want to look like the odd one, right? So what do? You fear abandonment. You fear this way to survive those negative feelings that you get inside when you're rejected is to do everything that other person expects you to do, even to a point of jeopardizing your own psychological and emotional well-being. The other thing that research suggests is a reason for people pleasing and perfectionism is a psychological response. We all have had situations where people pleasing and perfectionism was kind of positively reinforced, meaning that it was praised, it was looked positively upon, right? It was kind of rewarded in some way. Think about it this way. Let's say, for example, you're in public and, you're starting to see how rude people have gotten, which is a true thing. I don't like what I see in our society today, but you see rude driving, you see rude people in stores, you see just this anger, this complete detachment from just the kindness that we once had in society. It's gone. Well, let's say, for example, you hold the door open for someone as you're going into Target, for example, or as you're going into Walmart. And the person behind you that you held the door open for, let's say they smile at you. They say, thank you so much. Or sometimes they'll even say, oh, so sweet of you. Thank you so much. What does that do? That rewards that internal person, right? It's that external validation. And so, boom, there's that positive reinforcement. And now you feel like I have to open the door and hold the door open for everyone. And so it's kind of like a behavioral response, right? It's a psychological response and it's a survival mechanism. You know what to do to get what you want. You know what to do to survive. You hold the door open. The other thing thing research suggests is your family toxicity has pushed you to seek that external validation. Having a family where, they don't approve of you, they don't pay attention to you, they treat you negatively, they call you names, or they regard you as someone who's lazy and unimportant, how do you work against that? Well, you do the things you need to do to gain that external validation. And sometimes that's being a people pleaser, right? I'm going to give you what you want out of me so I can then feel better about me. The other thing is environmental influence. You may have learned over time. In some fashion that people pleasing and perfectionism gets you where you need to be. And of course, you were likely praised. Grade school, right? Being a fifth grader, sixth grader, high school student, a college student, whatever. If you do exactly what the teacher wants you to do, you're probably going to get an A+ on that paper. You're going to get a star and you're going to feel great. Everybody's happy, right? The other thing psychology highlights is a kind of a motivator for people pleasing and perfectionism is that you have had some kind of experience in the past where you've had a negative response or you've been punished in some way for not doing what that other person or that somebody wanted you to do. And so the best way to protect your ego, to protect your mind, to protect your heart and how you see yourself, you do exactly what people want you to do, because that is the best way to protect that inner you, right? It's almost like protecting that inner child, if you will. And the last thing that psychology highlights in research about people pleasing is, your own competence, your own level of competence is at stake. So we call this self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the idea that you kind of have this theory about yourself, that you're capable, that you are good at things, that you are successful, that you're able to reach a certain level. And so if you have positive feelings of self-efficacy, you see yourself as being capable, right? It feels great, doesn't it? Anytime I get on YouTube, it's like my mind switches, right? I'll disclose briefly, just once again, that I do get nervous. I do get a little bit anxious before I speak, whether that's at a conference or on YouTube, and even on here with you beautiful people that I love seeing every Friday. I still get a little bit anxious, but as soon as that camera goes on, or as soon as I'm called to do the work, boom, it's like I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just doing it and it feels natural, and I'm going to continue doing it, right? But if I felt that my competency was at stake somewhere, I may kind of overdo it, and I may try to prove to all of you, which would be a terrible mistake, that I know what I'm talking about. And so people pleasing kind of pushes you out of the realm of authenticity, And I had to learn that many years ago. I could not attach to the people who needed me, my clients, the children I used to see and study and evaluate, all of you on YouTube, the people that come and see me, for attached to them appropriately just by spewing psychology. I had to be authentically me. And so, having that people pleasing part of you, that perfectionistic, I have to get this done a certain way. It kind of moves your authenticity, and then you become kind of like this robot and you're just performing to get a response. And that isn't healthy, right, guys? So before we jump in to signs in yourself that you are experiencing a complex attachment behavior, I'm going to go to the chat box. I'm also going to break down traumatic bonding in this chat too. So stay tuned for that. Let's go to the chat box. You guys are talking away and I love seeing it. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Kyra knows 144. Okay, somebody catch me up. So, this has always been an issue for me too. And I don't know, I probably have ADHD undiagnosed. Something's wrong with me. So I'll see an acronym. Okay. I can talk about anything under the sun that's involving my area of expertise, just like that. Okay. You guys on this channel know that. If I see an acronym, I'm lost. Okay. So somebody tell me what GTSY is. Kyra knows, fill me in. It's probably very explanatory. There was a time in my life, I'm not going to say when somebody texted me LOL, and my first reaction was LOL. What does that mean? There you have it. So somebody let me know what GTSY is. Thank God. Is it I don't know. I can't even guess it. There you have it. The therapist is stumped. I have no idea. Kyra knows. Fill me in on that one. Oh, geez. If nothing else, it'll crack you guys up. Okay, Betsy, hello and welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. And Kyra knows, I don't know if I said hello to you. I'm so sorry if I didn't. Welcome to the chat as well. Betsy says, hi, Tamara. So happy to catch you again. Yes, so glad. She says, you are the best. Oh, thank you so much. Your channel is so very helpful. You are an angel on earth. My goodness. Thank you, Betsy. And you are an angel as well, just to give me that. I'm not going to say validation, but just to share that with me authentically. Thank you. That's so beautiful. Yes, Deb. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. When it comes to her kids. Cascadia Condor, hello and welcome to the chat. Glad to see you. Says, hello, Tamara. Great to hear you are doing better and working in the garden. Yes, thank you. That's my calming me time. Sammy, I don't know if I said hello to you. I'm so sorry. Welcome to the chat if I totally forgot to say hello. Glad to see you tonight. Patricia Van Winkle, hello, welcome. I don't remember seeing you. Welcome to the chat. Glad to have you on tonight. Poppy444, hello and welcome. Glad to see you as well. Black Girls Getting Their Shift Together says, I didn't realize parts of my people pleasing until I went to therapy. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we're not aware of people pleasing because it's so ingrained in who we've become, right? Like nobody wants to believe that they are people pleasing because they need external validation or they have some kind of internal need to feel validated, right? So it's very, excuse me, it's very easy for us to people please and not know it. I'm sure there are bits and pieces of myself where I'm still people pleasing and I'm not aware of it. Sometimes, and I'm going to teach you this tonight as well. Sometimes I have to talk to myself, okay, and say, Tamara, you are people pleasing and you're people pleasing because you know you don't want to do that 17-page research study and have it in by Monday. Why are you doing this? And then I have to pause, pump the brakes, and look at myself and say, I just didn't want to say no, right? And so then I have to reevaluate and then shift my position. So yes, that's my suggestion. We're going to talk more about it tonight, but you are correct. Sometimes you don't even know you're doing it. Yeah. Thank you, Poppy444. Same for you. Same for you. Annie Walker says, I call myself a recovering perfectionist. That's a good one. I feel like we need Perfectionist Anonymous, right? I really do. It's just, it's not okay sometimes. Yeah. Deb, you're awesome. All of you guys are awesome, to be very honest. Deb says, Tamara, you do know you are still a people pleaser. Just now, you know how to have boundaries. Oh, that's a good one. Yes. Okay. I can see that. I can see that. I think it just depends on what it is. You know, if I'm passionate about it, if I'm passionate about a person, right? If it's somebody I want to help, you know, something that hits me in my heart, yeah, I can still be a people pleaser. You're right about that, Deb. Thanks for psychoanalyzing me. That was good. Courtney Fraser, hello and welcome. You are not late. I'm glad you're here. Kevin Tui, that's a good one. Welcome to the chat. Glad to see you as well. Jesus loves us. Oh, I love that. Welcome. Glad to see you tonight. Says, hi, Tamara. Thank you for sharing this information. God bless you. You're welcome. You're welcome. God bless you too. Let me just make sure I'm not missing any comments that we can kind of pick apart here. Robert Redmond's clip channel says, hi, Tamara. Hi, chat. Just got back from a little drive in my mobility scooter. Oh, that's awesome. Those are kind of therapeutic too, right? Welcome to the chat. Glad to have you. Luminous Liz, hello and welcome. Glad to have you on tonight's live chat. Okay. I'm gonna put this one up here. We can pull this apart before I jump back into the content. Cascadia Condor says, "What about walking on eggshells? I know a lot of us grew up feeling like we had to act that way. Is it the same as people pleasing?" I think so. I think walking on eggshells is pretty much the same as people pleasing because here's what you're trying to do. You don't want to rock the boat, shake the boat, make someone feel uncomfortable or as if you're against them. So walking on eggshells is kind of like saying, just stay over there and we'll all be fine. you know and it's you kind of tiptoeing around the person in hopes that that will prevent a big explosion. Individuals who have borderline personality disorder, and they are in a relationship or they have a really toxic family dynamic, there's family members that feel that they have to walk on eggshells around that person with borderline personality. And that's because sometimes the fear of abandonment and the stormy relationship of that person that has borderline personality disorder, it is sometimes so overpowering that somebody can step on the wrong egg and create a huge explosion. So most people who are in a relationship with someone with borderline personality disorder who can be very reactive, walking on eggshells is usually the thing that family members and other people do just to prevent that explosion. So walking on eggshells, people pleasing, I would say they're one and the same. They may be a little slightly different, but I think it's pretty much the same. Thank you for that question. That was a great question. Yes, Robert. Yep. My excuse me, my great grandmother used to have a scooter and she would do the same thing. And the neb and everybody's business. That's my granny. Okay, Black Girls Getting Their Shift Together says this topic is insightful. That's wonderful. So glad. We're going to jump back in just a second here. Yes, I hope that I'm going to be able, Luminous Liz, to give you what you need. Hello, NW. Welcome to the chat. So glad to have you tonight. Patricia Van Winkle says, "Thank you so much for the stream, Tamara. You're welcome." We're going to jump back in, okay? Let me just welcome Anthony, Mikkel. I probably messed that up. The Truth Seeker. Love that. The Truth Seeker. Welcome. Welcome. Okay, so okay, so let's jump back in, okay? And I'll get back to the chat box. I'll pick and pull apart some things. Let's talk a little bit about signs in yourself. But first, let me delve into traumatic bonding, okay? Traumatic bonding is, for those of you who may not have a very practical understanding of it or definition, traumatic bonding is a complex attachment behavior. It's a behavior that has impacted many of my clients over the years. I've been in the field for 15 years. You guys who know me well know that I've been doing this work for 15 years. And for the first, I'm going to say 10 years of my career, so starting out when I was like 23, the first 10 years of my career had included nothing but traumatic bonding because I worked in residential treatment facilities where there were families who had to be separated from their loved ones. I also worked in a hospital with psychiatric patients where families would come in and visit. In those settings, there was a lot of traumatic bonding because most of the people who were in the hospital, in the residential treatment facilities, they had a very toxic and traumatic bond with somebody in a family. It was either because of toxic family dynamics, sexual abuse, emotional incest. Let me know if you need me to explain that. Sexual incest, physical abuse. There was something traumatic that happened to these individuals. And let me also highlight now that I have a person who is talking to me as a consultee, if you will. So they're consulting with me, and they are dealing with traumatic bonding. And what they're learning about traumatic bonding is that it's not an experience where you can walk away and slam the door and say, you know what, I am no longer negatively attached to that person, because you're always going to find yourself either fearing that you're going to be attached to somebody else in a way that makes you a prisoner, or you're going to struggle with the emotions and the negative thoughts that comes from the question, why did I stick around so long? Traumatic bonding from a practical sense is, I am in a relationship with somebody, I am a family member to somebody who has an emotional and psychological grip on me. The grip is so tight that it's hard for me to think outside of this traumatic bond. It's hard for me to function outside of the traumatic bond. And it's also hard for me to question the relationship, question the foundation of this relationship, question if I'm happy or not, question if I feel safe, because the relationship is so entrenched with abuse, with intermittent positivity, with this person abusing me 1 minute and loving me the next, that I can't see me, right? You become almost invisible to thyself, if you will. You know, I have a video coming up tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern time, where I break down traumatic bonding for you. And I also give you some insight on whether or not you have been a victim of traumatic bonding yourself. But traumatic bonding is just that, right? You lose self awareness. Now, sometimes you may experience what's called cognitive dissonance. And while you're in that relationship or that family relationship or that other relationship, friendship, whatever, while you are stuck there, you may find yourself kind of swaying between two opinions on that individual, because that person has kind of popped up being positive from time to time, and then they pop up being negative from time to time. So you're always kind of caught off guard. You don't know which person to expect. But for some reason, you keep holding on to that positive view of that person because it's so much easier. It's so much more pleasing. So you might as well just hold on to the good side and totally abandon that negative side that you know is there, right? And so you kind of go through a cognitive dissonance. It's I can't deal with looking at that negative person, but I'm definitely going to hold on to the good sides of this person. And so it keeps you stuck. That is a traumatic bond. So how does people pleasing and perfectionism fit into this? In a traumatic bond, the last thing that you want to do is sway the boat. You don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to cause friction. You don't want to cause anger. You don't want to upset things. You're going to walk on eggshells, like Cascadia Condor just mentioned. So people pleasing and perfectionism can grow out of that. You know, you kind of develop this pattern of behavior over time that says, this has kept me protected for so long, and so I'm going to continue this behavior. It makes sense in a traumatic bond, because your ultimate goal in a traumatic bond is to stay out of the fire and to keep that other person from harming you. And so how do you keep that person at bay? You do everything that they need you to do to please them. And so you become a people pleaser and a perfectionist, because it's a very, I'm going to say, a toxic survival mechanism. Okay, that is traumatic bonding. Let's go to, what are the signs of that in yourself? Excuse me, guys. So, what are the signs? Let's talk about it. The first sign, I should say, the research suggests is a clear sign of traumatic bonding and people pleasing is something known as fawning. And that's basically avoiding any kind of perceived threat, any kind of perceived danger by people pleasing. I'm going to do everything I need to do to keep you happy. I'm going to be a totally different person than who I really am. I'm going to talk positive. I'm going to act like you want me to act, because I need to stay in the zone of protection. And so this is the way that I do it. I give you what you want out of me, and I act like I'm okay with it. And I do it over and over and over again. That's fawning. Now, self punishment, that's another sign that you've been in a traumatic bond. And that's also another sign that you've kind of developed people pleasing as a survival mechanism. Self punishment. You know, you don't trust, you don't believe people, you're not sure people are honest, you don't open your heart to people, you keep yourself out of relationships, you don't allow yourself to love. You know, you kind of put up all these defense mechanisms that are way up here, and it's hard for people to get in, right? Self punishment. It's kind of like saying, self punishment is kind of like saying, I've been traumatized, and I've kind of grown outside. I've grown from this toxic family dynamic in such a way that I don't want to experience any more pain. And so now I'm going to kind of self punish by keeping myself back. I'm not going to be in a relationship. I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to trust. I'm not going to believe people. I'm going to put up many, many barriers and defenses to protect myself. But it can kind of feel like a self punishment. I have a client right now who's dealing with this. She wants to get married. She wants to allow this wonderful guy into her life. She wants to be happy. She wants to be a mom. before she turns 28. All of those wonderful things that most human beings desire. But because of all of her trauma, she is afraid to do that. So what does she do? She kind of holds herself back. And even though her emotions kind of, in our sessions, her emotions kind of get full, and she's excited. She's telling me about their possible ability to get married, and the beautiful children she wants to have, and the commitment she wants to allow their relationship to have. And so she gets really excited. And then I visually see her just kind of back down, like, "Mm, I'm not going to let this make me happy." Right. My uncle was like that. My uncle was like that. He said once to my mom, "I don't get happy because if I get happy, I'm going to be disappointed." And so this is kind of the same concept, self punishment. You also lose the ability to be independent when you're in a traumatic bond, and self assured. You also lose this when you're a people pleaser as well. You can't be independent, you can't feel self-assured, you can't be confident if you're constantly giving yourself to people outside of you, right? Because you're draining your own internal resources just to make somebody else happy. And you're also afraid, if you've been in a trauma bond, to step out of that trauma bond, right? Because that's going to cause some kind of uproar, uncomfortability. I don't even know if that's a word, but it's a word tonight. You also forget that you have power in choices. In a trauma bond, you don't assert yourself. You just kind of pace yourself in that relationship to keep things going as you need it to go, right? You're walking on eggshells. And when you're a people pleaser, you're kind of doing the same thing. So you forget that there's power in choice. You have the power to choose. It's not easy to see that when you've been in a toxic family dynamic and you've been traumatized for most of your life. Let me take a little bit of a break, guys. Go to the chat box, drink some tea. I'm sorry, guys. I'm still trying to get over this cough and a little bit of a sore throat. So bear with me. Okay, let me go back to the chat box. Kyra knows. Is that what that meant? Good to see you. Oh, geez. I swear. I I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. Thank you, Kyra knows. I think you're clarifying for me what your acronym meant. I need to go to sleep. That's probably what it is. Black Girls Getting Their Shift Together says people pleasing puts you in the realm of authenticity. Yeah, I understand what you're trying to say. I think you're telling me that what I said earlier was a light bulb moment for you. Yeah, yeah. People pleasing puts you out of the realm of authenticity. Uh, to to Takarika Styles. I mess your name up every time. I'm so sorry. I'm glad to see you though. Welcome to the chat. Glad to have you. Thank you, Robert. Redmond's Click Channel says, good to see you. Yes, I know now. I won't forget it. Deb, you're in a good mood tonight. I can tell. Thank you for that. Oh my goodness. I don't know what's wrong with me. I think sometimes I'm so cerebral that I miss the small stuff. That's what it is. Chrome Butterfly, thank you for that. Thank you, Main House. Thank you, thank you. Hi, B. Welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Glad to have you tonight. Nope, you are not late, B. No way. Ooh, sorry. Patricia Van Winkle, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. Elizabeth, hello and welcome to the chat. Says, hi, Tamara. I don't understand this live thing. Once YouTube writes it's in the 24th, then it writes it's on the 25th, but I'm accidentally here. I know. I'm so sorry about that. Okay. I don't know what's going on either. I did talk to, side note, guys, I did talk to YouTube and they told me that they're having a little bit of bugs here and there because they're rolling out new features and doing some odd stuff. So bear with me. I'm sorry. I don't know how to help that. I wish I did. Lisa Smith, hello and welcome to the chat. Glad to have you. Says, this doesn't seem surprising to me anymore. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Daniel Lawrence, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Says, my first working job ever was a good server, and I have now been working food server jobs for 20 years. I am stuck in my people-pleasing ways that I cry before and after work every day. Help. Oh my God. Yes, because Daniel, you're tired, you're burned out, right? And that's what happened to me some 5, 6 years ago, I just burned out because I wanted to give and give, and I kept giving and kept giving and kept doing and didn't say no. And so, yeah, you do break down. It's almost like, Daniel, it's almost like your brain is telling you when you do cry, I'm tired again. Find a new way to exist, you know? So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So stay tuned, okay? Okay. Live Life says, is there a link between people pleasing and dissociating? I just realized that I tend to dissociate and I feel like it stems from self protection in childhood. Well, that's an excellent question. I don't know of any research where there's a clinical or research connection between people pleasing and dissociating. I will say this though, people pleasing is researched to be a survival mechanism. It is also researched to be a way to kind of keep danger at bay, right? People pleasing, you don't have to deal with things you don't want to deal with. But so too is dissociating. So they are both survival mechanisms, people pleasing and dissociating, but maybe for different reasons. And maybe sometimes they can overlap in certain situations. That was a great question. Now you're making me want to go look that research up. Adila, hello and welcome. I hope I said that correctly. Welcome to the chat. Glad to have you tonight. Chrome Butterfly says something very good here, and I agree. She says, I am amazed how much power rejection and acceptance hold. Yes. Well, let me just say briefly, and I'm going to finish reading your comment, that our society has been built upon perfectionism. It's been built upon people pleasing. It's been built upon intelligence. It's been built upon all kind of things that humans state is desirable, right? Intelligence, attractiveness, passion, credentials, education. The list just goes on, right? The foundation of society is pretty fickle because it's been built on all those falsehoods, right? And that's why I think sometimes we overlook people who are not what we think they should be, or they don't look like us, or whatever. We overlook them because we're constantly looking for the next best thing or the wonderful thing that's way over there somewhere. And so you're right, power and rejection. There is power in rejection and acceptance, and that's been an issue for many centuries, right? Even dating all the way back to slavery times. There is certainly power in rejection and acceptance. That's what our society has been built upon, right? It's kind of sad though. Chrome Butterfly goes on to say, I was exactly like you growing up and very social. I was a good girl. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes that good girl can get really tired, right? Chrome Butterfly, it's like, okay, I'm a good girl, but I'm getting tired of being looked at as perfect and squeaky clean all the time, you know? So thank you for that comment. That was a good one. That was a good comment. Sammy says, I used to have a hard time saying no, but not to people please, more because of loneliness. But now do people get mad at me when I refuse to do stuff? Absolutely. Because Sammy, let's say you've been a people pleaser, excuse me, around them for many, many years. Now you want to set a boundary and say, I'm not doing that. And it's really hard for them to digest that, right? We're going to talk about this in a little bit here before we wrap up tonight. I'm going to continue with the signs that you're going to see in yourself, and then I'm going to show you how to survive this. But let me just say that if you've been a people pleaser for so long and you decide to make that shift, it's going to be hard for other people to shift with you. So be ready for that. You know, they're going to push back. Okay. B says, Tamara, have you heard or done research on dark psychology? If so, could you maybe talk about it sometime in the future? Absolutely. We will definitely talk about dark psychology. I have a couple live chats coming up soon, all the way between now and May. So yes. This was a requested topic as well. So you guys already know that if you request something and it's in my area of expertise, it'll be on the channel. Shalom. I hope I said that correctly. Monk, hello and welcome. Glad to have you on tonight's live chat. Tarika Styles says emotional incest question mark. Let me just briefly define that for you, then we'll jump back into the content. Emotional incest is basically this, that you're in a relationship with somebody who is putting you through emotional extortion. They're kind of blackmailing you, and they're making you something that you didn't ask to be. So let's say, for example, you are a daughter to a mom who never had a husband. You know, she conceived you out of wedlock. The person she conceived you with walked out on her, so now it's you and your mom, and she's got four other little ones. Okay, mom has to work. Mom is burdened and tired, exhausted. Excuse me. So what happens? Well, emotional incest, the concept of emotional incest, I should say, is you then become the parent. You become the parentified child. You become the caretaker of the young children. And now you're being pushed beyond your years to be something that you're really not cut out to be. And so it's kind of like an abusive maneuver. It kind of puts you in a tight bind, and it's not okay because it's emotional extortion. It's emotionally taxing, and it makes you something that you're not supposed to be. My mom hates that term emotional incest because all she can think of is sexual incest, right? But the field of psychology is always looking for new terms, so they titled this dynamic emotional incest. I'll post my videos in the description box for you so that you can see what this topic is all about. Let's go ahead and jump back into the signs that maybe you've been in a traumatic bond and now you are people pleasing out of trauma and a toxic family. So we left off at the choice that you have, right? You have to remember that you have a choice, but if you're in a trauma bond or if you're in a people pleasing mindset, then you lose your ability to choose and you forget that you have that. So that's where we left off. The next thing is that in some way you learn to over apologize. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I said that. I'm sorry I shared my feelings with you. I'm sorry I did that earlier today. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm sorry I misscheduled you. I'm sorry I didn't bring you your book yesterday. Oh, I'm sorry to bump into you at the grocery store. Like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I sometimes do that, but I do that out of courtesy of my neighbor, right? Courtesy of people that I think is around me. Sometimes you can say, I'm sorry, way too much and over apologize out of anxiety, but you can also do it as a trauma response. You know that saying sorry kind of clears the air from anything that may harm you. So you apologize and you over apologize. The other thing is that you kind of run from conflict and confrontation. It's too painful. So even when it's your right to step up, even when it's your right to say that I'm hurt or I have these feelings or I want this in my life or I want this out of my life, even though that's your right, you're going to pump the brakes and say, no, I'll wait till next Tuesday. Next Tuesday will come. No, I'll wait until 6 months later. 6 months will come and you're going to, procrastinate again. And it'll be like 17 years and you're still in the same spot because you don't want the confrontation, right? The other thing is, there's excessive efforts to make other people happy. Excessive efforts to make other people happy. I think my dear late grandmother went through this within our family. She just did everything for all of us, every last one of us. And she has at least 12, 13 grandkids. And I'm one of them, my brothers as well. And she just supported every last one of us. Like there's nothing she didn't do for any of us. She was that giving, loving, protective. She was the matriarch. But here's the scary part of that. It also tore my grandmother out. She was burned out. And a lot of her grandkids, other than me, saw that. I saw that, but my cousins and the rest of our family didn't see that. That's the way I meant to put that. So people pleasing really drove my late grandmother into the ground. But there were, these excessive attempts to people please all of us and to just give everybody what they asked for, and that can burn you out. You also crave external validation when you're in this mode, whether it's a trauma bond or a people pleasing mode. You crave that external validation. So even when things are going your way, you may kind of throw some kind of rock over there, see if it'll move some things around, right? An example of this may be you're doing a really good job in your job and you are close to getting a raise. Your boss thinks you're wonderful, but then you go just a little bit further to show him that I will go the extra mile because I want to please you. You need that external validation. It's also easy to pick up other people's behaviors and make them your own. You kind of transform, right? People who have been in a trauma bond or people pleasers, they know how to fit themselves right into a core group of friends or a coworker situation group or something, and they fit themselves in there and they transform. They're different at the office, they're different at home, they're different with their girl pals, they're different with the guys. You transform. Not that you're adapting, which is normal. You're adapting is normal, but you transform. When a person changes completely, that is an issue. So that's basically what I'm saying. It's also hard for you to understand that empathy doesn't mean that you have to bring down all your boundaries. You can keep your boundaries and still be empathic. You also may struggle with identity, not knowing who you are because you're constantly going in and out of identities, excuse me, to people please. Okay, that is basically the signs of a traumatic bond. But if you catch my video tomorrow at 6 p.m., I'm going to give you a lot more as to what's going on when you are in the middle of a trauma bond. Let's pause here, guys, for a second. I'm going to go back to the chat box. Then I'm going to give you tips on how to survive, how to get out of this people-pleasing mentality and this trauma bond that kind of keeps you stuck. Okay, so we're going to go into that. Sean Hammer, hello and welcome. Glad to see you on tonight's live chat. Welcome. Yes, Anthony. Yep. A lot of this can be like enmeshment with a family. Absolutely. Absolutely. New start. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you back in a live chat. Says, why do histrionics and narc try to mess up your sleep? I remember you asking this once before. I'm probably going to address that in the comments section. If you post in the comments section of this live chat, I'll go ahead and answer that question for you. But I do want to stay focused on this particular topic. Deb says, acceptance is part of safety. We are social critters. Yeah, absolutely. Right? You get into a social group or you buy a house in a neighborhood that accepts you. Yeah, you feel like you're flying on top of a cloud. It's wonderful. And that's why when you're rejected and not accepted, it's so painful. Miss Kim 671, excuse me, says, hi, Tamara. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you on tonight's live chat. Lisa Smith says, I've learned that a trauma bond is basically like being in a shared fantasy defense. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one. There used to be a term, and it's no longer in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is that thick book. It's right here, that we diagnose patients and clients out of. There used to be a concept known as shared psychosis, where there's a psychotic person who has delusional beliefs. They're probably hearing and seeing things that's not really there. They're kind of peculiar in how they think. Life is a certain way through their eyes because they're unwell. But what do? They attach onto another person, they pull them into the relationship, and that person becomes psychotic. So it's a shared psychosis. That used to be a thing. It's no longer. It is no longer, but you're right. It can be seen as a shared fantasy defense. That's really good. Patricia Van Winkle says, my siblings did something horrid that made me realize that I was from a toxic family. I always thought there was something wrong with me until I knew about toxic family. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I've been approached a couple times recently to talk on toxic family in a variety of settings. So you guys are going to be getting a lot of content to my YouTube channel this year. But the different agencies and people who have approached me on toxic family dynamics is saying to me, and they're all of different agencies and places, they're saying to me that toxic family dynamics is something we never really talk about, even in the field of psychology. And so we need to talk more about it because people can then realize that, okay, your depression comes from toxic family dynamics. Your anxiety comes from toxic family dynamics. You can certainly experience complex PTSD from a toxic family environment. Like there's a lot that can be the foundation of adult trauma, adult problems, relationships. That's because of toxic family. So, so yes, Patricia, I totally get that viewpoint 100%. Yeah, main house says, as they say, there are worse things. Key signs of traumatic bond? Absolutely. Some people will say to you, a parent may say, a narcissistic or sociopathic parent who's very self centered and sneaky and tries to manipulate your mind will say something like, you're right. They will say something like, there are worse things in this world than the way that you think you're being treated right now. I had a narcissistic dad say that to his daughter in therapy a couple months ago. There's worse things in this world, as she bawled her eyes out crying, saying she felt unloved. So, yes, absolutely. That is a traumatic bond warning sign. Sammy says fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, the four horsemen of HPA-AXIS dysregulation. Yes, we should switch places, Sammy. Let me break this down for those of you who are not aware of this. The HPA-AXIS is the hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal axis. Okay, that's a lot. The hypothalamic, which is the track in the brain of the hypothalamus, which has a lot to do with kind of like our drives, sex drive, energy, desire, all that stuff. Okay, so the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, is a little pea-sized structure right in the middle of your brain that kind of secretes cortisol or stress hormone when we are in moments of fight or flight. That's why when you're anxious, you may feel yourself getting dizzy. You're starting to like feel overcome with heat. Your heart rate is going up. Your body is then going through that dysregulation. And the adrenal gland is basically a gland that also secretes hormones that triggers the stress response. So that's what Sammy is talking about. And it does, it causes you to go into fight or flight 100%. Okay. Free live. I'm so sorry. Welcome to the chat. Glad to have you. I don't get this. I really don't. I don't know what's going on with the YouTube notifications. Just briefly, so you guys will know, if you guys are subscribed to my channel, those who are not, make sure you subscribe so you can get videos like this and live chats all the time. I had to go into my promotion there for a second. But if you look at the subscribe button, then around the subscribe button is the notification bell. You want to hit that notification bell, okay? So that you can get those notifications. And if that bell is ticked and you're still not getting notifications, I have no idea. It's a YouTube issue. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep trying to figure it out. I promise you. Travis Hall, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Colibly Flyer, hello and welcome once again. Says, once I lost trust on my sisters, who I suspect are narcs, it is really hard for me to trust them again. Is this normal? 100%. If you feel like your family dynamic was toxic or there's some kind of trauma, it is very normal for you to not trust again, right? Remember earlier, if you were here, Colibri Flyer, part of people pleasing and perfectionistic behavior is to keep that disapproval, rejection, and pain, or those toxic people at bay, So the last thing that you want to do is trust them. You want to keep them out that way because you're having a hard time trusting them. Okay, let's get back into the content, guys. I'm going to give you some tips on how to come out of this people pleasing mindset and how to kind of maneuver your way out of a traumatic bond if you find yourself in one. Then I'll go to the chat box and then we'll wrap up. So, how do you survive this? Here's what has helped me over the years. And I'm using this with my clients, and it seems to be helping them. The first thing that I often suggest, and all of these suggestions are backed by research. I will put all that in the description box for you as well. The first thing is learn to be okay with disappointment. Learn to be okay with disappointment. Here's what I mean by that. It's okay not to be perfect. Learn to be okay with making mistakes. Learn to be okay with that other person being disappointed in you. One of the things I struggled with growing up was disappointing anybody I thought was an authority figure. Anybody. And it would really cause me distress. It would make me feel anxious. I would have a hard time just being in the presence of that person. I had moments of intense guilt at times. And so that was kind of the me growing up, the adolescent that didn't know any better. But the way to maneuver yourself out of that position is to learn to be okay with their disappointment, right? And that takes a lot of practice and a lot of self-development and confidence building and self-awareness, if I didn't already say that. So find some way to be okay with disappointing the other person. Practice saying maybe. Okay, or no. Just practice saying maybe, okay, or no. Somebody asked me the other day to do a conference, a 7-day conference, and to do like a keynote speech for the 7 days of that conference because they have like different bits and pieces of the conference. And I'm like, I can't. And so what did I have to do to kind of practice saying no? I said, okay, I'm going to need some time to think about it. I'm really appreciative for this opportunity. Do you mind if I get back to you on that? And so that allowed me some time to kind of step back, and you can do this as well. Step back and kind of reassess the situation, kind of clear your head a little bit, and then reintroduce yourself to that situation and make your decision, even if it's a no. Even if it's a no, find a healthy medium. Sometimes, kind of, saying no or stepping out of being a people pleaser can be tough. But if you can meet that person or that obligation halfway, that's good enough. Even if you can't be 100% what they need you to be. Ask yourself what you really want out of the situation. Let's say, for example, you're in a trauma bond with your father. He's a narcissist. He's very unloving. He appears loving, but he's very unloving. He's very cold. He's callous. He doesn't really care about you. You feel like you've always been kind of connected to him, but in a very unhealthy negative attachment. And so, how do you kind of keep him at bay so you can maintain your sanity? You may have to inspect what it is that you really want, inspect why you're not putting up a boundary, and then go from there. Go from there. That's the only way to deal with that, right? Or find a happy medium, right? Meet that person or that obligation halfway. Use your cognitive empathy, or what we call mentalizing. Cognitive empathy, we talk about it all the time on this channel, guys, is basically when you have an idea of what that other person wants from you, right? And mentalizing, it's empathy, it's putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. Use that, right? Okay, I know what it is that you want, I know what it is that I need to apply to this situation, but I'm going to what ABC, maybe step back, maybe say no, maybe say later, whatever. So you can use cognitive empathy to kind of help you navigate the situation a little bit better. I also too want to encourage you guys to remember that there's a such thing known as maladaptive coping. And I think a lot of us who are perfectionists or people pleasing, or those who have been in a trauma bond of some kind, there's maladaptive coping that comes in the form of agreeableness, comes in the form of just being easygoing and just going along with everything just to keep the peace. So you want to ask yourself, am I coping with this in a maladaptive way? And if so, what steps can I take to get out of this? What steps can I take to gain my freedom back, to gain my peace of mind? You know, I told one of my clients the other day, you want to authentically reestablish your values. Authentically reestablish your values. Your values can protect you from people pleasing, can protect you from a trauma bond as well, right? And I also think over time, and this is the last one for how to survive this, over time, you need to learn to love yourself and learn to love being alone. I think a lot of people please because they don't want to be alone. So out of loneliness or fear of abandonment. But in some way, you have to learn to be okay with just your own company. And that is healthy. Learning to love being by yourself. That keeps you out of a lot of people pleasing behaviors. It also can protect you from a trauma bond because you're not holding on to that negative relationship, family or otherwise, because you need them, right? So love yourself, learn to love yourself, and learn to love your time alone, your serenity, right? Just being alone with yourself. Okay, let me go to the chat box, guys, and then we're gonna wrap up because I'm way over. I'm way over time. All right, let's see what you guys are saying, and then we will wrap up. I hope those tips are helpful for you guys. Just a little bit of I call it kind of like a spiritual and existential, philosophical set of tools to kind of manage this. So I hope those tips and tools were helpful for you. Free Life says, I have a problem with people pleasing and self sabotage my whole life. And I find it difficult to get into relationships because I'm afraid of getting hurt. How can I deal with this? Yeah. I mean, I think we all, to a certain extent, can be afraid of being hurt, especially if we are individuals who have. kind of like this desire to commit. I'm a person of commitment. I put my all into a relationship, whatever relationship that may be, a co-working, a romantic relationship, family, the list goes on. So I think for me, I can relate to you, Free Live, and I think a lot of people can. You don't want to be hurt if you're going to put yourself into something and really put all your energy into that. I think the best thing to do is to, if journaling is not your thing, because sometimes I encourage journaling why you're afraid, and what you're afraid of. But if journaling is not your thing, I think just kind of engaging in some self introspection, asking yourself, what am I afraid of? Why am I afraid? And what's the likelihood that my fear can come to pass? Now, if it's, I'm afraid somebody's going to betray me, I totally get that. And there's really no way to work with that. You're going to have to do a lot of work on the inside of you. But yeah, this is difficult. If you were my client, I would have you journaling every time you encountered that fear of being hurt. I would then engage you in, a lot of worksheets where we can talk and reflect. And then I think healing that trauma, whether it's from childhood, adulthood, trauma is at the foundation of that fear of being hurt. So clearing that trauma up, that hurt and pain is going to be essential for your situation. That's the way that I would deal with that. I think it's Tanya Turner. Hello. Welcome to the chat. Glad to have you. I haven't seen you in a little while. Says, hello, Tam. Haven't been on in a while. Broke iPad. Oh, yeah, I've been there. I see you are still doing the good work. Thank you so much. And I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Yep, I agree, Patricia. Very, very true. Barbara Shears, thank you for that clarification. It's like I look at the acronym and I totally lose it. I don't know. I don't know. Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome, Main House. Absolutely. All right, I'm just going through comments before we sign off. Ruba, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Says, can OCPD stem from childhood trauma from toxic families? Yes. Give me 1 second. Yes. Yes. So, obsessive compulsive personality disorder is OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And basically, what that is it's almost like this rigid way of viewing life. You have an obsessive way that you think about things, and it's a personality disorder, so it's very long, it's chronic, right? It's going to be difficult to treat. It's basically become a part of who you are. It is a part of who you are. And so that can stem from toxic families for sure. It can also be part of the people pleasing issue that we're talking about tonight. It's kind of like this obsessive and this chronic way that you think that you have to behave and do things in order for things to be just right. And yes, it can stem from toxic families or childhood trauma. 100%. That was a great question. And thank you for mentioning that. Jesus Loves Us says, I am dealing with a traumatic bond with my mom. I moved in with her last year to temporarily help her with her medical situation. She now feels I'm supposed to continue in this manner. This is hard. Yes, it is, because there's an expectation that's been built in that relationship, right? So it is very difficult. In situations like this, if I get a client like this, the first thing I tell them to do is slowly back away, slowly build in independence for you and that other person, because what you've created is a situation where you're like this, and now that other person now depends on this. And so the best way to manage getting out of that is to slowly and strategically, I'm going to say, back away little by little, but do it in a way where you don't feel like you're still burdened and that other person doesn't feel like you're pulling away from them unfairly. So take your time and slowly back away. That's what I would say as a suggestion for you. I hope that's helpful. R.A. Andrew says, I'm sorry you were dealing with her unreasonable expectations. My mom was the same. Yes, absolutely. I have a lot of parents that I've had in the past in psychotherapy in my private practice that are like that. Courtney Fraser, hello. I think I said welcome to you earlier. I can never remember. If something happened 5 seconds ago, I don't remember. I don't know. Courtney Fraser says, I over apologize all the time. I'm a people pleaser and a perfectionist. I think for me, it comes from childhood and going forward. I have disabilities and traumas. Yeah, all of that mix, Courtney Fraser, is the reason for that. Is the reason for that. Dawn One, hello, welcome to welcome to the chat. That is so cute. You were babysitting and he finally fell asleep just to catch the final minutes of this live chat, right? Oh, I love babies. I hope he didn't take you out, Dawn One. Those babies are something. I love holding them. So when they come to my office, oh, I love them. They're just so squishy and lovable. But here's the thing, if they have a virus, no, thank you. The last baby that got me sick, I had pneumonia. Okay. So they're cute, within reason. Sun and sunflowers. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you on tonight's live chat. Says hello, first time here. Yeah, I noticed. Welcome. Says my former bestie, she would say backhanded comments and I would try harder. She stated we had a trauma bond once I was breaking away. Wow. You also want to, and I'm glad you said that because you also want to be careful with people who say we're in a trauma bond, right? Because they're kind of in a toxic way, they're kind of claiming you, and that's not okay. It may not be a trauma bond. It could be a codependency. It could be control. So you do want to look at a person a second time when they say we're in a trauma bond, because that may not be the case. And trying harder because she's displeased. That definitely is people pleasing, and that's because you're trying to avoid something, and that's totally understandable. Me, hello and welcome, says, my mom forced me to drink alcohol before handing me off to my alcoholic, incestuous father for the night. Wow, that's definitely number one, traumatic. And secondly, that's toxic. Um, what you want to what you want to kind of protect yourself against is people pleasing, right? Because you can people please just to keep people like that are similar to your mother at bay. I don't know. What am I? You tell me. I don't know. Jajets, I don't know what I am. I don't know. Chrome Butterfly says, yes, Tamara, this has been said to me so many times by one of my parents. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys, I'm scrolling through, just making sure I'm getting all of you. Kayla Donahue, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Says, so glad I found you, Miss Hill. Thank you for sharing your passion. You're welcome. And thank you for coming on to the live chat. Glad to have you. She says, my mom and sister often contradict themselves. I was born into a people pleasing role. There are pros and cons of this. It's fun to learn. Yeah, there are pros and cons to being a people pleaser. I agree with that. Elizabeth says, I think shared psychosis is a thing. It exists in marriages, cults, and political parties. Oh, yeah. But it's titled something different in the DSM. So I will put that in the description box for you guys so you can have it. Me says, thank you. I'll be 62 next week and still doing counseling 2 times per week. Yes, you're welcome. And wow, at least you're kind of growing and learning and doing the work that you need to do. So it's good. It's good. Okay, scrolling through. Hi, Kat. Welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Says it took me 20 years not to give a D. I will put it that way. Oh goodness. You may have to rephrase that comment, Kat, so that YouTube doesn't like block you or bar you, because they are something when it comes to profanity. So, and especially on a channel like mine where I keep the profanity limited. So that's a new YouTube rule for sure. Harris Renee, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Hello and welcome. I don't remember you seeing you earlier. Says thanks for this free information, Tamara. You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, just scrolling through to see if I didn't say hello to any of you or didn't answer questions. Fairy girl, excuse me. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you on here tonight. I didn't see you earlier, so thanks for jumping on. Excuse me. Sammy says, I want to study psychology and do research. And if I can't do that, teach. Yeah, you should. Go for it. Go for it. You're going to learn all the information that just makes you passionate, and you may get to a place where it becomes a part of you, where it has, like it's become a part of me over time. You're welcome, Colibri Flyer. You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Um, Adrian Paul, hello and welcome to the chat. Glad to see you. Says you can start picking up on dysfunction of a mate and find yourself acting in their unhealthy manners. Absolutely. Yeah. Because remember, a traumatic bond kind of causes you to transform your own identity. So as well as I should say, people pleasing. So you're right. Searching for truth. Hello and welcome. Haven't seen you for a little while. Says I'm sitting in tonight and the topic hits home. Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. We're going to sign off here because I'm way over time, guys. Fairy Girl says, you give us a lot of tools to build with, my lady. Thank you. And I'm so glad about that. I really do try to give you authentic information. Okay. Making sure I didn't miss you. Natasha Mahanti, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Welcome to the chat. Says, is it possible to be trauma bonded with people but not be aware of it? Absolutely. It's almost like codependency, right? Over time, there's patterns in the relationship that becomes a bond. How you think and feel towards each other becomes a bond. What you do in response to each other becomes a bond. And sometimes if you're married and you're in a bad situation, that can become a traumatic bond, right? Because that ink on that piece of paper that binds you together, and because you live your lives together, can create an unhealthy trauma bond. If you're in a bad marriage, for example, and you not even know it, you may find that out at divorce court, that, oh my God, we are bonded, and we're bonded in a very negative, toxic way. So yes, very good question. Okay. Sean Hammer says, it took me over 50 years to get to grips with all of this. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot for me to even talk about and teach you guys about. He goes on to say that I'm now stuck at the stage where anyone you speak to thinks you're blaming others for your inadequacies and wallowing in self-pity. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just trying to search my mental bank, see if I have something to offer. Yeah, I agree. That's where you kind of have to, Sean Hammer, gain that disposition that says, I really don't care what you think at this point. I don't. Yeah, you're welcome. I noticed. I'm glad to see you and thank you for that. Absolutely. Okay, did I miss anyone? Probably. I apologize. I have not been able to get to all of you. I see that you guys are speaking. Jesus loves us. You're welcome. Yes, wonderful. God bless you too. And thank you for that. Thank you. All right, guys, we're going to pause here. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. is my video on traumatic bonding. Join me then. I'm going to be in the live chat box. It's not a live, it's a video. I haven't done that in so long, but I will be there in the chat box. Thank you so much, guys, for a wonderful back and forth flow. I love how you guys share information with each other and on the chat. YouTube will make the live chat box that I'm looking at available to all of you within 12 hours. Okay. So keep that in mind. You can come back and see everybody's comments and the conversation. All right, guys, have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next Friday. Bye-bye.